Amazing. So we have two factions: Proof of Work, which wants to make sure that the miners and which are ostensibly are the most powerful people in the network, the miners, the people who
Mhm.
maintain the system, are the people doing the mining.
Yes. Satoshi referred to them as honest nodes.
Honest nodes. Miners that mine are honest nodes.
Yes.
Miners that, as opposed to,
A Sybil or an attacker or I don't know that
when you say
Satoshi
civil,
ever
you're
used the
talking
word
about like
Sybil.
a small oligarchy of non-mining miners, so to speak, non-mining decision makers.
Essentially, yeah, it's people that are just leveraging influence. They are attempting to be trusted for something other than proof of work.
My brain kind of broke when you said when you connected the influencer world because I'm just thinking about everyone with influence today.
Well, I mean, that's what it is. I mean, they literally organize BTC consensus on Twitter and Reddit. I mean, it's and so I mean, it comes down to like fucking anonymous, faceless moderators of internet forums, and then people that manage the censorship board on who you block
This is
on
so funny.
Twitter.
So what you're saying is that if on the internet nobody knows if you're Visa.
Yes, 100%. Well, and this is super relevant too. So here's the thing: on the small blocker side of the Bitcoin Civil War,
Mhm.
they were being funded. So there was a company in 2014 that was established called Blockstream, and this is all of the significant Bitcoin developers of the era came together to say, let's see if we can become professional Bitcoin developers. And so we're going to put together this pitch deck and explain to them that, look, we have the GitHub keys and all the maintainers are in this group and all this stuff. So we've got this gatekeeper role. So do you want to pay us to develop Bitcoin? And so they put out, the basic stuff that you would do, seeking out, Series A funding or angel money or whatever. And they pitched it to a number of Silicon Valley VCs. And so the Silicon Valley people came together as a group and said, okay, who can we put together to actually make this happen? I actually know one of the first people to get this pitch deck was a group called BitAngel, which I don't know if they even still exist, but a buddy of mine worked there and is like, bro, these friggin' idiots from Blockstream, they have no business model, they have no profit model, they'll never make any money. And today they're a $3.2 billion company that doesn't produce any, they sell t-shirts and hats on the Lightning Network. but but at the time, they were pitching like, hey, look, if you want to help us control the network and steer it in a way that makes the most sense, invest in Blockstream. And so these Silicon Valley people came together with some New York bankers. So a guy named Barry Silbert, who's a very successful venture capitalist and is a Wall Street guy, put together a few people, including Larry Summers, who's a name that you'll recognize. He was a Clinton administration advisor. I believe he was a Treasury secretary of some sort. He was a president of the World Bank and some other things. Well, he joins the board at this new company called Digital Currency Group, managed by a guy named Barry Silbert. And they raised their money primarily from MasterCard. So MasterCard funded the creation of Digital Currency Group along with New York Life Insurance Company, Bain Capital, which was Mitt Romney's venture firm, Silver Lake Capital, and a few others. There's probably 6 or 7 other that are smaller in the series. And so they created Digital Currency Group, which basically bought Blockstream for one, but founded Lightning Labs, and then bought basically every name that you would recognize in the entire blockchain space. So this is Coinbase, Kraken, CoinDesk, Grayscale Investment, Genesis Trading Group, Abra, Zappo, Blockchain.info. I mean, probably 80 or 90 others, but big brands. The big exchanges, the big custodians. Oh, BitGo, Fireblocks, the people that are doing the big commercial custodianship. Do you know these people?
Who owns Tether?
so they're a real interesting one.
To
They
me
are
is like the canary in the coal mine. If you look at the printing, You know?
Well, they're all connected. One of the other players that they brought in early was AXA Investments, which is I think they're French, but they're a European insurance magnate. Like they're the insurance company in the
Yeah,
EU.
they're like an
And so
reinsurance.
yeah, right. Real the sketchy stuff, the stuff that you're like, does money do that? And like AXA does. So
Will we really back up covering this loss? No, but we'll try
you're hard to
to.
hear. I can't hear you without the mic.
Will anyone back up this insurance claim? I don't know, but they want a policy, so let's write it.
You're right. Amp, write it up.
Yeah, we are going to insure a continent.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So anyways, so they bring them in. That brings in the Europeans, and then they go to Asia. And the major player that they brought out of Asia was a company called Digital Garage. Digital Garage's CEO is a guy named Joy Ito, who is also a faculty advisor at MIT. And so they bring in all these people. They bring in all these people to fund all these different ventures. So MIT had the only other independent Bitcoin development group outside of Blockstream, but they were all sharing the same pot of money.
Princeton, right?
I don't know where Blockstream's based out of, actually. There is, if I recall, they're a Silicon Valley based corporation. But I actually would need to double check that myself. I'm not positive. But MIT claims to be independent because they're part of the Learning Lab, the Digital Currency Initiative, and all these different things at MIT. You know, it's a research thing.
Yeah.
But they were being paid by the same group, this same like shell of a shell of a shell of venture firms. The interesting thing is Joy Ito, the founder of Digital Garage, which was their Japanese connection, was forced to step down because he was laundering money from Jeffrey Epstein into the Digital Currency Initiative. So the main developer, a dude named Vladimir Vanderlaan, and then another also significant but slightly less significant than Vladimir was a dude named Corey Fields. Both of those guys were the two Bitcoin core developers employed by MIT Digital Currency Initiative, and they were being funded almost exclusively by Jeffrey Epstein money. It was known that it was Jeffrey's money, and this is why Joy Ito was forced to step down, because he was very purposely laundering it, telling people not to ask where it came from, and this kind of thing. Which then begs the question, why the hell is Jeffrey Epstein paying for Bitcoin development also? But they're all connected to these various venture capital firms. The biggest player in that space is MasterCard. But then you look at all these people, and it's all financial magnates. It's all old world, old money, old hierarchy, paying for BTC to be what BTC is. And so I think the most obvious thing is that they wanted to control disruption of the payment space, because Bitcoin allows anybody to be a payment processor or a payment receiver of a decentralized currency, or it allows anybody to be a really effective proof of work fintech startup. And so look who's involved in making BTC the thing that it is, this hype machine that doesn't really do anything technologically. Well, it's Silicon Valley venture capital, and it is very old world money. And so that's exactly what happened. And BTC is what it is today. It is an investment scheme. Make sure to use the Lightning Network, make sure to use this wallet, make sure to use Coinbase custody, make sure, oh, don't worry, your coins are in BitGo. You can no, Grayscale Investments just bought more. All portfolio companies of the same bunch of shell companies in the thing. Like, don't worry, join the mainstream investments thing. You're going to be super rich because we're just going to keep pumping valuations, and we're going to use one of our tangential side companies, a company called iFinex Corporation, which is the parent company of Bitfinex, the exchange, and the parent company of Tether, the issuer of the Tether currency. And they just gave $220 million in the last 2 weeks to Blockstream. So now they are one of the largest holders of Blockstream stock, iFinex Corporation. So, but they've been involved in the same space the whole time. So what they're doing is they have a fiat token of a fiat currency that they are using to pump valuations of the portfolio companies of like the 50
this sounds like the darkest
entities.
Pitch to buy BTC ever. It's like,
oh, it is
look
100%.
How can this go down when we have everyone on our? We have like the all-star team from both leagues.
Invest in the techno-fascist New World Order by buying BTC. We're all gonna make it.
Well, it's interesting because it was when I first started coding with Money Button. I was like, so you're telling me in 10 years nobody else built something like this? Is that what you're telling me? right? And so
They
it
were.
led me to the conclusion that somehow this was being stifled.
Mhm.
Because if you have 10 years to mock up a HTML JavaScript button, they, look, Ryan's a good dude. He can't be the only one who ever had an idea for a tender
Right.
pay. So why isn't it implemented anywhere else? And what makes it so convoluted that you can't?
Well, because BSV is a scam, because everybody already knows that Bitcoin was never designed to scale, and therefore everything on the BSV network that shows that the Bitcoin protocol was always capable of being a global payments network is paid by propagandists, and that's it.
When I
And
saw Money
you
Button,
can check all the publications, which ignore that all the publications and influencers are all also paid by Digital Currency Group, etc.
when I saw Money Button, I was like, first of all, you can swipe. It's connected innately to your wallet. The JavaScript works depending on your balance. And I can edit this button such that the user can write in a dollar or a billion and still swipe
Mm-hmm.
right as the mechanism.
Yep.
Why doesn't that exist anywhere else? Because you'd think that would be like the first use case for a digital
Um,
cash.
in many places it can't. First of all, just the structures to make it do that, like fees make it impossible to calculate small payments and that kind of thing.
Oh, the
So
fees.
that's part of it.
Right.
But secondarily, most of these networks don't exist for the sake of actually doing payments, but only talking about doing them in the future or in theory. Or actually, most of these things are based on Ethereum anyway. So, like,
So they
if you look at almost every blockchain out there that's come in the last 2 years, they're
Ethereum.
just clones of Ethereum. And Ethereum wasn't really designed to be a payments network either. It's supposed to be like a distributed computation platform. And what people want to do is primarily raise money, issue tokens, do DeFi, and none of that requires useful, juicy, simple wallets. So part of it's an incentives thing.
It's so now where would you say the Bitcoin civil war is now today? You started off with proof of work literalists, let's say,
Mhm.
and then you had people that wanted to write their own commandments.
Yes.
So where does that leave us in 2021 as El Salvador buys up the sold bags of tether enthusiasts?
Yes. um, it's interesting. Like we've won, like the originalists, the Bitcoiners, the people that believed that Bitcoin could always scale. We have lost a lot of battles and we've won a lot of battles. If you look at the battles we've won, I mean, we've mined 2 GB blocks that have 40, 50,000 transactions in them. We've seen
Gigabyte.
up to,
Wow.
yeah. I mean, like these are
What's
things. I
the
mean, we were told for,
argument for against big blocks? What is
if
the
you make the
fundamental
blocks too
argument?
big, it'll become too expensive to store them and to synchronize nodes. And then simple people with simple hardware won't be able to participate in consensus anymore.
Weren't simple people with small nodes never meant to be miners?
In my opinion, yes, that's crystal clear. But
Okay.
that's the argument. That's the fundamental philosophical argument, is that Satoshi wanted there to be lots of little nodes on the network, and I would disagree. But that's the major sticking point. And then to the people that actually read Satoshi's words about it, like
Mhm.
how he advocated for Bitcoin to make its way into server farms and custom hardware and all of this stuff, they look at it and say, well, Satoshi was wrong. We built a better system. Like Satoshi wasn't right about everything. He's not a god. Stop quoting Satoshi.
Mhm.
So, which is a really convenient way to say that, Satoshi didn't understand Bitcoin and therefore he's irrelevant. So,
And that's what I'll be honest with you. I feel like I'm one of the few people in the world that believe that if anyone is Satoshi, it's Craig Wright, because I haven't seen
mhm.
anyone actually be able to have a conversation with him where they don't drown immediately. And they can use marketing and volume, but I haven't seen one person really be able to explain why the limit, what what it was, and the Taylor
I
series and
think
all of those mechanical things.
for me, the biggest evidence that Craig Wright is Satoshi is just how many things that he broke to the Bitcoin universe that they didn't realize actually came from him.
Mm.
So the first time he showed up at a Bitcoin meeting in, as Craig Wright, was in 2014. He went to a Melbourne Bitcoin meetup, and he starts explaining tokenization on Bitcoin and the management of a DAC, which more typically are called DAOs today, but is a decentralized autonomous corporation or association. And he explained, like, well, you can tokenize shares, you can issue tokens, and those tokens can be voting rights. And with those voting rights, you can push out, all these different things that issue tokens that do all these, so he basically explains the entire use case of the entire Ethereum blockchain in like a 10-minute video of somebody recording him. And everybody's like, man, who the hell are you? Like, where did you come up with all this stuff? Like, you can't do tokens on Bitcoin. And then he's like, well, no, you can't right now, but you used to be able to. And then it's funny because the interviewer is like, well, how long have you been involved in Bitcoin? And he just kind of, well, since the beginning, don't worry about it. He's very aloof about it, but like clearly doesn't want to be, doesn't want to have that conversation. But he continues. He keeps talking about like, oh no, global payments and this and that. And here's why zero conf transactions work. And here's how you can build a terabyte block and all these different things. I'm like, people are like, this is bonkers. And then between 2014 and 15, he started going to more of these sort of Bitcoin meetups. And there's a few of them recorded. And he starts talking about the stack. He starts talking about what you can do in Bitcoin script. So he's like, well, so if you loop, if you allow, in the op return, you can create a transaction that creates an outer loop that allows you to basically do general computation, or as people call it, Turing complete computing. He starts to explain why Bitcoin is a Turing complete system. And Nick Szabo, who's a famous cypherpunk, is sitting there and he's like, I don't actually think that's true. I think you're wrong. And he, Craig's like, well, how would you know, Nick? Like, have you done anything with it? Like, nobody, literally at that point, no person had attempted to use the stack for anything that could do like anything like Conway's Game of Life, or any of the things that show that a network is capable of general computation, or that a computer is. And so Craig is going on and on about this stuff. And, after that meetup, and still even now, people tell me, I get people that argued with me this week that Bitcoin was never Turing complete, to which I tell them, like, we've built Uniswap style systems that have state, and they can do stateful transactions. They can do all these different things. Like, you can create automated market makers and all this stuff that requires it to be a Turing complete system. And they're like, yeah, but it doesn't technically fit the definition. So like, they're looking at something in reality and saying that doesn't work because it doesn't fit my theory. And
I see this phenomenon across a lot of spaces where people have never been more outspoken about things that they technically can't know is true. And it's a weird phenomenon I've come across in the last few years where people are very certain about that which they couldn't actually physically know to be true or false.
Sure. Plain and simple, they wrote Craig off because he's politically inconvenient. They had built a narrative around Satoshi being dead and Bitcoin being a public project. And Craig showed up and was like, I'm a big blocker and I'm going to disrupt the entire internet and every fintech company, and VC is unnecessary, and MasterCard and Visa and everybody are going to be side chains of Bitcoin when I'm done with it. And so he basically pissed off 10 or 15 trillion dollars worth of capital.
Essentially, it sounds like you have Craig Wright on one side and you have everyone else on the other. And so far,
in many ways, that is the truth. Yeah.
Technically, on one hand, from a price fetishism point of view, you can say that BTC is winning. But if I had to teach someone how to code today, I'd probably give them some BSV through Money Button and show them, you want to learn how to code? Let's create a checkout.
Right.
Or
show them, you want to really blow their mind? Show them Scrypt. Go to scrypt.io. That's the black pill right there.
Let's end here. Let's say I love BTC, and let's say furthermore that I hate BSV, right? And I couldn't hate Craig more. What are the things that exist on BSV today that will drag all of my superficial excuses out of me? Like, what are the things that you see that are, well, whether it's Fabric or anything, because you've talked to most of the major players here.
So one of the hackathon, the most recent hackathon propositions was using a previously unused script function to do phone calls over Bitcoin. So using their application and the Bitcoin stack, you can do a phone call over what's essentially an unconfirmed transaction, and when it hangs up, it confirms the transaction, or it pushes the transaction.
Is
So
this in
that's
using that
something.
code to generate computation? Those
Essentially, yeah. So you're initiating a transaction. You're creating like an
I'm gonna
escrow,
start a
essentially.
Google Colab notebook.
Uh-huh.
Jesus.
Yeah. So that's a cool one. I think the other one, like I said, is script. So it is a JavaScript translation language for the entire Bitcoin stack. The guy that created it is a genius. He was an ETH developer. He currently lives in Silicon Valley. His name is Xiaowei Liu. He's a Chinese American. At least I think he is. I guess he could be from any of the other Chinese speaking countries, but he's a really nice dude. I just hung out with him in Miami last week. But if you are JavaScript capable, you can program in Bitcoin script using the script language. So it is scrypt.io. Check out his docs. The dude is a friggin' ace. The stuff is awesome.
So let's think about like the people who actually want to build something.
Gotta hold that mic. I can't hear you again.
I
also got to wrap up pretty quick. I got an appointment.
This is the last
15 minutes.
one. So for if I am a software developer and I want to build an entire ecosystem from scratch, what can script do for me today?
Everything. It is a complete smart contract language. There's even some pre-built applets. So if it's like, common tasks, you can just copy and paste out of the documentation. But it is it's basically, it's an open source operating system on top of Bitcoin that lets you fuel anything you can create with transactions. And it's out.
If I was a creator or a business owner who wanted to use script and really build some prototypes, where could they find the developers they would need to hire if they don't have that innate capability themselves?
There's about a dozen of them on Earth that understand Bitcoin script, but the beauty of it is that it's basically a JavaScript emulator, which is the most common programming language on Earth. You can find JavaScript in places where the people are almost functionally illiterate in written language, but they can program in JavaScript.
Yeah. So, no, you're right. You're right about that.
Yeah.
Incredible. So what does the next 6 months look like for you?
Endless biz dev, basically. I see this as the biggest business development opportunity of a generation. So like bringing businesses into this space. You're right.
If someone wanted to work with you and build out that, are you looking to collaborate with people? Are you looking to attract people?
Always, 100%.
And how would they interact?
I am at Kurt Wuckert JR everywhere. So that's, you can DM me on Twitter. You can hit me up on Telegram. I'm really easy to find out. You can just Google my name actually, and I come up everywhere and I answer all of my DMs. So if you got a good idea, or if you got some money and want to find a good idea, whatever, hit me up.
Fantastic. Daniel,
okay.
Anything?
Yeah, sorry for the on and off before.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, we have a few projects going on, and I was thinking is it possible to have another talk, like
yes,
more like
absolutely.
Not recorded? Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I just downloaded this Call In. It's a you can do like a podcast, and you can do all the editing like on your phone.
Cool.
It's actually
nice.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's from David Sachs, I think. He is the creator. It just came out. So yeah, I actually want to try that with a podcast once.
I am
for sure
interested in this script. So we're gonna start.
Oh, it's incredible.
Like in the next week, but I really appreciate this. Again, it was Daniel and I who looked at your interview. Who is it with? Or was it just you talking?
I saw one with Roy Bernhard. Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
And we actually talked to him like a week ago.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Great guy.
He's good people.
Good people.
I really got to run, guys. So
I will talk
soon, but please, we'll be in touch.
All right. You take care.
Great. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.